Go off. Go.
Welcome to the fourth edition of Before the Battle. My name is Nick Baldwin, and you know me from MMAJunior.co. And joining me on the panel, as always tonight, is the man behind the best fight picks and MMA Thought Twitter account. First up, Daniel Levy. How you going? How you doing, Daniel?
Doing great, Nick. What about yourself?
Not too bad as always. And also on the panel is a Vendetta fighter, a feature writer. Go Paolo. Paolo, how you doing?
I'm doing good right now. Just having a little technical difficulties here because my dog's he's not cooperating, but it's all good. It's all good.
For sure. Glad to have you, of course, back on Before the Battle. We went on hiatus, of course. I was over in Toronto, Ontario for 10 days or so, and obviously we have a bit of catching up to do. Obviously we had 4 UFC events in a 7-day span, and mixed in with that we had Bellator, we had Titan, so it was just a crazy week and a half for MMA fans alike. And so first off, Daniel, how do you get through all this UFC and other MMA promotion? I'm assuming you watched most of it, but was it difficult to watch nearly all the action?
I watched it all, and it wasn't difficult at all. I mean, I'm a fan of this sport, and the more the better. I mean, some of these guys, they watch, baseball every single night. They watch, basketball, football, depending on what season it is. For me, I'm cool watching, the UFC multiple times a week. Normally we get, Legacy, Titan, RFA, so we're watching multiple events anyways, but to see multiple UFC events, I was just stoked, man, so I loved it.
Good point. And Paulo, how was it for you?
It's pretty good, man. I mean, you can't complain. Like sometimes before, when we didn't have as many fights, people were complaining. They're like, "Oh, well, the next event's not till 3 months away. Why isn't there a UFC event?" And now that we have so many UFC events, people are complaining and they're saying, "Wow, there's too many fights." It's simple. If you don't want to watch all the fights, then don't watch all the fights. But if you love, then you watch all of them. It's as simple as that. And I wasn't able to watch all of them, unfortunately. For Ultimate Fighter, I missed a couple of the fights, but I was able to catch the main ones. Same thing for the Scotland card, but the other fight night I caught a couple of Bellator and Titan, so it's all good. Can't complain. Fun week, really fun hectic week.
Yeah, for sure. Hectic week, that is, but fun, definitely, obviously. Like Daniel said, I hadn't thought of it like this, but we do often get multiple MMA events in 1 week. You have Titan, you have WSOF, you even have higher promotions like Bellator, but sometimes you'll get smaller promotions like RFA, like Legacy on the same week, possibly on a Friday, and then you have the UFC on the Saturday. And most MMA fans will watch both of those, but we don't think about that like that, and we're just saying, oh, well, there's too many UFC events now. Well, really, there's no more MMA than usual. Obviously, this was a bit more, but if you get 2 UFC events rather than an RFA event and a UFC event, you got to be happy about that, because the best MMA is the way you want to watch, really. So let's start off quickly with UFC 189. Obviously, this was already nearly 2 weeks back, so we're not going to talk about too much, but in the main event, Conor McGregor gained the interim featherweight championship with a second-round TKO over Chad Mendes. So, Daniel, did anything with this performance surprise you at all? Did it surprise you how well Mendes was doing in the first 8 minutes of this fight? And just talk about the performance a little bit.
I can't say I was too surprised. To me, it was like an Anderson Silva performance. Anderson Silva doesn't care if you take him down. Anderson Silva doesn't care if you lay on him for a little bit, because right when you get back on the feet with Anderson Silva, unless you're Chris Weidman at the end of Anderson's career, you're going down, and that's exactly the case with Conor McGregor right now. I'm going to go on record and say that this guy's the next Anderson Silva. So, I mean, to me, that was a phenomenal performance. He absolutely destroyed Chad on the feet, and on the ground, he minimized all the damage. He got out of a Team Alpha Male guillotine. I mean, what more do you want from the guy? So, knocked out Chad Mendes in under 10 minutes.
And Paulo, I know, are you on the same page as Daniel for this fight, or were you expecting money to take home the featherweight belt?
No, I bet on Conor McGregor. I bet him twice, actually, like Daniel did. I didn't lay down as much juice as Daniel, but I still bet on him, and I'm not at all too surprised about how it happened. I mean, he wasn't training for a wrestler, and I think Kavanaugh even said he was a bit injured going into the fight, so he barely did some live wrestling heading in. And you can argue that Mendes also was taking it on like 2 weeks' notice, so he gassed out early. But people are discounting the fact that Conor McGregor was eating up Chad Mendes on the feet. A lot of the haters would say, "Oh yeah, if Chad got tired, if it's a full training camp, Chad Mendes would have steamrolled him. I don't think so. I think it would have been a similar result. Maybe it would have taken longer, but no, it went not exactly as I thought, but Conor McGregor won. That's all that matters. He won, and he won impressively.
I don't want to spend too much on UFC 189. Obviously, it was already nearly 2 weeks back already, but you got to talk about the co-main event, an instant classic between ruthless Robbie Lawler, the welterweight champion, and Rory MacDonald. Surprisingly, Rory MacDonald was actually up 3-1 going into the 5th and final round. And let me just say, this was one of the best fights I've ever seen, definitely in my top 10 for fights ever. And I love this fight, obviously, and it's a little bad. It's too bad for Rory because he was 2 or 3 minutes away from becoming the welterweight champion, and that was his dream, his all-time dream, really. And it was about to be accomplished for him. And then Lawler caught him, and then Rory just kind of dropped, and then that was the fight. But great fight, you can't complain. So Daniel, quickly, what are your thoughts on the fight, and what's next for Lawler? Actually, don't answer that question because we're going to talk about what's next in a little bit.
I consider Rory MacDonald versus Robbie Lawler to be the greatest welterweight title fight of all time. And, something interesting that I was talking to a couple of my buddies about the other day is that this isn't the end of the road for Rory at all. Something that's really interesting is that GSP, Johnny Hendricks, and Robbie Lawler, they all have something in common. Do you guys want to know what it is?
We all lost title fights?
They all lost their first attempt at a UFC welterweight title shot, and then they all got it on their second attempt. So this was Rory MacDonald's first attempt, and if he's following the trend that GSP, Johnny, and Robbie are all following, then history might repeat itself, and he might get it on his second shot. But right now, Robbie Lawler is just one of the scariest dudes around. I mean, we all know his stand-up's insane. How about that sprawl? Jeez.
And Paolo, I know obviously you enjoyed this fight just as much as anybody else. Quickly take us through the fight and your thoughts on Lawler's performance.
Lawler, actually I'm going to go to script and go with how heartbroken I am to see Rory. I actually scored it 2-2 for them, but I think the judges had it 3-1 for Rory. So Rory was so close, like that. It sort of was like a Carlos Condit fight, but times 10, because the Carlos Condit fight, he was winning that fight, and then he got hurt badly, and then the ref just stopped the fight. I mean, this one, mentally he was taking it, but his body just couldn't take it anymore, and he just came down because I don't know how the body works that way, but it just went to the point that his body just couldn't. The mind was willing, but the body wasn't, and. No, I definitely think he's going to come back. I'm seeing a couple of haters saying, oh, yeah, he'll never win the title. He's not championship contender. He's mentally weak. Look at him. He turtled up. It's not come on. That was the greatest fight of all time. Hats off to both of them. And Robbie, Daniel already covered most of it, man. He's insane. He's one of the most ruthless. I mean, he lives up to his nickname, Ruthless Robbie Lawler. He comes up there and just tries to destroy you, man. That intensity, man. You can't match that intensity.
Definitely. Now, the next night we had the Tough 21 finale, but let's just skip over that because there's not too much to talk about. It wasn't a good card on paper. It ended up being a decent card. The only thing really worth talking about would be Stephen Wonderboy Thompson's performance, his big performance over Jake the Juggernaut Ellenberger. Obviously, he stopped Ellenberger in the first round via TKO. So great fight. There, obviously, can't wait to see Wonderboy back inside the octagon next. But let's go quickly to the main event of UFC Fight Night 71. Just last Wednesday, actually, Frank Mir took on Todd Duffy in the main event, and although the underdog, Mir rose to the occasion again and knocked Duffy out in the first round. And lots of people were picking Todd Duffy in this fight. Obviously, a win over Bigfoot Silva in 2015 isn't too much. I consider Bigfoot to be a walking statue at this point off of TRT, and I wasn't sold on Frank Mir being back into the top 10 of the heavyweight division despite how thin it is, but obviously you gotta say he's still up there, and I don't know if he's going to be a top 5 fighter anytime soon, but he got the knockout win. What are your thoughts on his performance, Daniel?
It was awesome. I mean, anytime you get two heavyweights or just anyone in the UFC going toe-to-toe and, until one guy falls, those are the kind of fights that not just guys like us like to watch, but casual fans that have never been exposed to the sport. They like seeing stuff like that. So obviously it was awesome to watch. And, props to Frank Mir. The guy, was on the verge of retirement, and he's coming out and knocking out the young guns. So, everyone was counting him out except me and some other people. I didn't count him out at all. If you listen to my podcast, I had Frank Mir winning that. But who cares what I think? I mean, just the performance he put on, it was awesome to watch. And, a lot of people know him for his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but for him to go out and knock out Todd Duffy, I thought that was great.
And Paolo, what's next for Frank Mir in your mind?
Oh, that's really hard. It's against Ben Rothwell. I was going to say Andrei Arlovsky, but Arlovsky's going to get a title shot, I think. More than likely he's going to get a title shot. And fighting Frank Mir might be a lateral or backward step for him. But that's a fight I've always wanted to see, man. Arlovsky and Frank Mir. But yeah, I think Ben Rothwell makes, the most logical sense. But, he could do, if Fedor comes to the UFC, if Fedor comes, Fedor versus Frank Mir might be a decent fight.
I obviously want to see Fedor back inside the octagon for the first time, but we'll see what happens. So obviously Frank Mir, the only one thing that makes sense for him, like you said, it would be Ben Rothwell in kind of one of those fights where you win that fight, you're one away from a title shot sort of thing. But something like even Mark Hunt or Travis Brown, despite them both coming off losses, that I would watch that too. But we'll see what happens. Obviously there aren't too many options at heavyweight, but I definitely think Ben Rothwell should be next for him. Now, let's go back to Robbie Lawler quickly. Jeremy Botter of Bleacher Report recently reported that Carlos Condit is next in line to fight for the welterweight title. And this fight, the thing with this fight is I can't wait for this fight. It'll be one of the best fights ever. Like, literally, this cannot be a boring fight. There's no way this can be boring. And the one thing with this fight, though, is lots of people don't think Carlos Condit deserves a title shot. But the thing is, I don't care that he doesn't deserve this title shot. I don't want to see Robbie Lawler versus Johnny Hendricks, the trilogy, because we know how that fight is going to play out. It's going to be a close decision. It might not be a fantastic fight, despite the first one being a great fight, one of the best of 2014. And either Hendricks is going to win a close decision or Lawler will. We know that. But Lawler versus Carlos Condit, first off, Daniel, who do you think will take home the welterweight belt after that fight?
Nick, I'm going to tell you this. I couldn't agree with you more here. I mean, who cares if Carlos Condit deserves it or not? I mean, did Chad Mendes deserve a shot at Conor? I know I'm kind of flipping the script here because everyone said Conor didn't deserve the shot when he's wearing gold now, so clearly he did. But, I mean, Carlos Condit's the former WC champ. He's the former UFC interim champ. I mean, the guy is coming off a devastating performance over a perennial top 10. Give him the title shot. I mean, all the people complaining, I have a question for you. Do you want to see Johnny Hendricks put his head between Robbie Lawler's legs again and stall out the fight? Is that what you want to see? Because that's not what I want to see. And I'm not going to speak for someone else, but I'm pretty darn sure that my friends Paolo and Nick don't want to see that either. So when you talk about Carlos Condit, not only does he consistently put on the fights that the fans want to see, but so does Robbie Lawler. So when you put those two in there, it's a recipe for violence, it's a recipe for fireworks, and it's a recipe for a fight of the night. Now you ask me, who am I picking to win? It's tough to pick against Carlos Condit, but here's the thing. In terms of opening a money line, I would choose Robbie Lawler to be the favorite, but I think if Carlos Condit has Robbie hurt kind of like Rory did, he's not gonna not finish the fight. He's the natural-born killer. So, it's a very tough fight to call, and I cannot wait to see it.
It's rumored to take place this December and possibly in Calgary, so that'll be a great treat if that happens for the Canadian fans. Obviously, I won't be going there, but Paolo, who knows? Maybe he has plans to fly down to Calgary and witness one of the best fights ever. But first off, Paolo, what are your thoughts on Jeremy Botter announcing this? Do you think it will happen? And just thoughts on the fight?
Oh, well, I'd be optimistic about it. I think this fight would happen, Some people are saying that Condit's going to get injured or they're going to move it to Vegas or something like that. Like, they might give Calgary the shaft like Dana gave the shaft to Toronto. I don't think that's going to happen. Well, who knows? Right? I mean, there's so many things that could happen in between it. But I'm just excited for this fight. If it happens in Calgary, that's a bonus. If it happens in Vegas, if it happens in the Caribbean, for all I care, if it happens in China, I don't care. It's a great fight.
For sure. And also, possibly scheduled for that UFC 194 card is a pivotal welterweight bout between Johnny Hendricks and Tyron Woodley. This will undoubtedly be a number one contenders match, obviously, with the winner fighting the winner of Lawler versus Condit, if this all goes out as planned. But who do you like in that fight? First off, Hendricks or Woodley? Daniel.
You know, it's tough to say because with those guys, you know, when they're on point, they're some of the scariest guys in that weight class, but they have performances where sometimes they don't show up. So it's just a matter of who's going to show up that night. You know, if both of them are at their absolute best, I'm going to have to just slightly lean towards Johnny Hendricks. But Johnny Hendricks, you know, he doesn't take his diet or nutrition seriously at all. I mean, you saw the recent pictures. I mean, a couple months ago he was talking about how he's changed his career and this and that. He posted a picture with Tyron Woodley, and he's got a huge belly. I mean, I can guarantee you the guy weighs at least between 220 to 240 right now, and I'm not exaggerating one bit. So, I mean, he's got to get his stuff together. But in terms of their stylistic matchups, you know, they both hit hard on the feet. They both got great wrestling, and they both, you know, if they don't get that knockout, they're both really good at stalling out the fight. So it's a tough pick. I'm going to assume that Johnny Hendricks is the favorite here.
Yeah, and Paolo, are you on the same page as Daniel? Do you like Johnny Hendricks to probably earn his third title shot, I guess you could call it?
Yeah, I'd really favor Johnny Hendricks here, but not by too much. You know, you can't underestimate Tyron Woodley. I think right now the only thing that's missing about Woodley is, well, I'm not entirely sure about his cardio going into 5 rounds. I mean, he was in a 5-round fight with Nate Marquardt, but he got knocked out in the 4th because I think he was gassing a little bit. But other than that, it's his striking game. I mean, the guy hits hard, hits fast. The only thing that's missing about him is he doesn't throw a lot of effective combinations. Like against Kelvin Gastelum, I bet him in that fight, and I was so frustrated because he was hurting Calvin a couple of times. But what he'd do is he'd hit him once, he'd hit him twice, and then he'd back up. He'd hit him once again, then back up. I mean, throw better, more effective combinations, and he'd have so much better chance to finish someone. Because that guy's an athletic freak, man. Woodley is a beast. But right now, I'm slightly leaning towards Hendricks. But you know, a couple of months down the line, I might be entirely on Team Woodley. Who knows?
Now let's move to the near future. We have UFC on Fox 16 taking place from Chicago tomorrow night, and in the main event we have TJ Dillashaw defending his bantamweight championship against Renan the Baron Barao in a fairly anticipated rematch. The reason I said fairly anticipated because I'm not dying to see this fight because I really do think it will play out similar. Obviously, you can't be dying to see a rematch of a fight that was a complete domination on one side, but it's happening, and I'm excited. But let's start out at the opening fight of the Fox main card. We have Joe Lozon versus Takanori Gomi, and if this fight isn't finished early, I really think this will be a great bloody scrap. Now, Daniel, who do you like here, Joe Lozon or Takanori Gomi?
You know, both of these guys are absolute legends in the sport. Obviously, Takanori Gomi, the former Pride champ. You know, Joe Lozon, the most bonuses in UFC history. So, I mean, you can expect a serious scrap like you just mentioned, Nick. And, you know, I'm going to favor Joe Lozon. You know, a lot of people say that he's got to take the fight to the ground to win, to submit him. I think he can beat him on the feet, too. So I got Joe Lozon all day here.
And, Paulo, are you on the same page, siding with, I believe, the biggest favorite on this card?
Yeah, Gomi, like, I'm a Gomi fan, especially during his days at the Pride, but when he got to the UFC, that's past his prime Gomi, and now that you see guys like Miles Jury knocking him out, Joe Lozon has sneaky power, man. Joe Lozon's dropped a couple of guys. I mean, a lot of people see he's just this BJJ guy, but I mean, he knocked out Jens Pulver really quickly. I mean, he knocked down Gillard and choked him out. He could easily knock out, I mean, not easily, but he could knock out Gomi, and I'm not going to be shocked. That's why I think the under 1.5 is a relatively good play here at plus money.
Yeah, I definitely like Lozon here, but I don't like. Most people are saying, oh yeah, he'll either knock him out or submit him in the first round, but I really do think it will go into later round, maybe the second or even third round. I don't think Lozon will finish it too early. I am expecting a Lozon submission in this fight, but I think it'll happen in the later second round or even in the third round. I think Gomi will give him a fight. I do think both guys will get beaten up a little bit. But I like Lozon inside the distance, but I just don't like some people are saying, I don't like that under 1.5 prop. I do think it will go a little ways, at least 10 minutes or so. But definitely Lozon. He's the biggest favorite on the card. I don't think the odds, I think the odds should be a bit closer, but I like where they're at. I definitely like Lozon. Edson Barboza versus Paul Felder is the next fight on the main card, and this could and probably will be fireworks unless we obviously see a quick stoppage because both guys have lots and lots of knockout power. That's why everyone cannot wait for this fight. So let's start with Paolo this time. Do you like Barboza or the Irish Dragon Felder in this fight?
Oh, I've been going back and forth about this fight a lot. Right now, I'm taking a slight lean towards Felder because he's tougher. He's the angstier fighter, and he hits really hard too. And Barboza, strike for strike, is the faster fighter. He's probably slightly the more. I mean, he's really cool actually. But I'm picking Felder because if this becomes a dogfight and it becomes a little, then they have to dig down deep inside. I'm gonna put it to the Irish Dragon to come out with a win. A lot of people are expecting there to be a knockout here. Some are like, yeah, that's entirely possible, but I think it could also go to a decision or a really late finish. But I'm gonna pick Paul Felder to come through here, so long as he doesn't try to match Barboza strike for strike, because I think he's gonna lose that way. If he just applies a heavy pressure game on him, keeps it in a phone booth, he's gonna take the fight to Barboza, and I think he's gonna beat him either by a close decision or knock him out late.
And Daniel, are you on the same page as Paolo here? Do you like Felder to pick up his third UFC win?
You know, it's an interesting fight because at one point, Edson Barboza was considered to be the scariest striker at 155 pounds, and nowadays, you know, Paul Felder is like that next generation version, and you know, not too many people have seen him or heard of him, but when they do, they're going to understand that this guy's striking is on that next level. And what you got to do to beat a guy like Edson Barboza is you can't go speed for him because he's way faster than Paul Felder. But Paul Felder hits hard. He's got better durability. He's got a better ability to take a punch. And he's going to get in Edson Barboza's face and make him start questioning himself. Now, one thing that, you know, as someone who's pulling for Paul Felder to win the fight, that you got to take into consideration is the fact that Edson Barboza did spend this entire training camp with Frankie Edgar. So, I mean, that can only help you. I mean, Frankie Edgar, former lightweight champ, the guy's a total badass. But nothing can change Edson Barboza's ability to take a punch or his confidence when he does get punched. So, with that being said, I think when Paul Felder hits him really hard, Edson Barboza is going to start questioning himself a little bit. Now, the thing is, obviously, when you're fighting Barboza, anyone can get knocked out. I mean, all he's got to do is kick you on that chin, kick you in that body on the right spot, and he can end the fight. But I don't want to bank on that one shot, so I got to go with Paul Felder here.
I actually like the Brazilian to take home a very close decision here. Like Paolo said, lots of people are expecting a big knockout here, and obviously for good reason. Both these guys are big knockout artists, but I actually think they'll just cancel out a bit, and I think Barboza will win a decision. But the thing is, lots of people are saying, oh, this will be fight of the night for sure, but you never know. Sometimes when you say stuff like that, when you say this will be one of the best fights ever, it doesn't turn out to be. Like, I really think these two guys are close, evenly skilled, evenly matched, and I think they could almost cancel each other out, and it turned into kind of a lackluster fight. Look at Edson Barboza versus Bobby Green. Obviously, Green didn't show up to that fight, but and Paul Felder definitely will, but you never know. I just have a bad feeling it won't turn into a great fight like lots of people are expecting. But if it does, I'm happy, of course. But I like Barboza here. I just think he's fought the better competition. We've seen the best Edson Barboza, and it's not like he's getting better every day where Paul Felder is. So we don't really know where Paul Felder will be in the rankings, you could say. We don't know if he's currently a top 5 fighter. I highly doubt he is, but we don't know if maybe he could beat guys like Eddie Alvarez tomorrow, but we don't know that. Where Edson Barboza, we know he beats guys like Bobby Green, we know he beats guys like Evan Dunham, but we know he loses to guys like Donald Cerrone. We just know a bit more against Edson Barboza. He's more experienced, and I think that'll earn him the decision tomorrow night. The co-main event, Miesha Tate versus Jessica Ai, a very important women's bantamweight bout in what will likely determine the next title challenger against the winner of Ronda Rousey and Bethe Correia. Obviously, they square off August 1st, just a week from today. And Tate is the favorite, but lots of people are picking Jessica Evil Eye in this bout. And Daniel, who do you like here, Tate or Eye?
I like Jessica Eye, and the reason why I like her is because, I mean, In my opinion, Miesha Tate's been on the decline ever since, her last couple fights in Strikeforce. She's getting dropped with head kicks by Julie Kedzie and barely pulling that fight off. Against Kat Zingano, she got destroyed. Against Ronda Rousey the second time, she got destroyed. A lot of people are like, oh, she took Ronda Rousey 3 rounds. No. Ronda Rousey took her 3 rounds because Ronda Rousey could have finished that fight at any point, but she wanted to, extend that ass whooping. Just keep throwing her on her head over and over and humiliate her. And that's exactly what she did. Miesha Tate had 0 success in that fight. So she lost that fight. Obviously, the Liz Carmouche fight, she looked terrible there. The Sarah McMahon fight, she looked awful in the first round. And then Sarah McMahon completely abandoned her game plan. And that's the lack of fight IQ on Sarah McMahon's part. So I think Jessica Evil Eye, she's going to come out very strong in the first round, and she's not going to make the same mistakes that Sarah McMahon made in the second and third. So I got Jessica Evil Eye here.
And Paulo, are you siding with the underdog as well, or are you going for Cupcake in this bout?
It's funny because when I first did my predictions with Vendetta Fighter, I actually picked Tate by split decision. And then when I did a little bit more research on this and put up my article with today's knockout, I'm surprised why Jessica Evil Eye would win. I completely sided with Jessica Eye, and I'm just going to echo Daniel's sentiments. Miesha Tate has been known to be a super slow starter. It's like round 1, she takes round 1 off. Like how Jose Aldo takes round 5 off. Well, Miesha Tate takes round 1 off. She almost always loses in round 1. Like Daniel said, she lost to McMahon in round 1. She lost to Carmouche in round 1. She was getting lit up by Julie Kedzie until she pulled off the armbar from out of nowhere. And I think, the only knock on Eye is her takedown defense. Like what a lot of Tate supporters are going to say, oh, what's Eye going to do when she's on her back? What's Eye going to do? Alexis Davis, who doesn't have the best wrestling, took Eye down like twice, and I couldn't do anything. And Jessica Eye I've been hearing that Jessica was training to work on her wrestling, and she also had worked out with Randa Marcos and Aljamain Sterling, and those are some pretty high-level wrestlers right there. Now that doesn't automatically mean just because you train with some really good wrestlers that you automatically stuff every takedown that Miesha Tate's going to throw at you. But on the other side of that, Miesha Tate doesn't even have the best takedowns herself. I mean, her takedown is only at like 40% or something like that, and she couldn't take Julie Kedzie down. Now, given Julie Kedzie has some of the most underrated takedown defense in women's MMA, but you know what I mean? Yeah, so I really like, not to get on this too long, I really like Eye to stuff most of Tate's takedowns. I think Tate is going to take her down once in a while, but it's not going to be enough. I think Eye's going to beat her two out of 3 rounds in a close decision, and I'm going to lean on Jessica Eye on this one.
Like you guys mentioned, obviously Tate has the wrestling advantage and Eye has the striking advantage, but I am actually going to differ with you guys. I'm going to side with the wrestler in this fight. I like Miesha Tate to win a very close decision. I definitely don't see a stoppage in this fight, but like Paolo says, never bet on women's fights, it seems. It screws people over so much. Obviously, you have Joanna Jędrzejczyk defeating Carla Esparza. You have, what other ones? Just so many. There's so many inconsistencies, really, with women's fights, it seems, especially the strawweight division, not as much as the well-developed, better developed, you could say, bantamweight division. But getting back to the fight, I like Tate here. I think she'll just prove that she is either the second or the third best women's bantamweight out there. But obviously, I could give her a fight. I do think it will be competitive, but I think Tate will just ultimately get the judges' nod. Moving on to the main event, you have UFC bantamweight champion T.J. Dillashaw defending his belt for the second time against the former title holder Renan Barão. So Daniel, let's start off with you. Who do you like to pick to take home the bantamweight belt here, Dillashaw or Barão?
There's 2 ways of looking at this fight. You can either say that T.J. Dillashaw has Renan Barão's number, or you can say that Renan Barão completely underestimated him and bought his own hype because he was like on a 31-fight undefeated streak at the time, and people were calling him pound-for-pound best fighter in the world. But now he's been humbled a little bit, and he's got a new reason to come back for that belt. So it's gonna be very interesting. I'm going to side with T.J. Dillashaw, but if Renan Barão wants to win this fight, it's kind of similar to the Paul Felder and Edson Barboza fight in the sense that Renan Barão can't go speed for speed with T.J. Dillashaw. He's got to pick his shots wisely. He's got to cut off that ring. He's got to counter him effectively. I'm going to have to lean with T.J. Dillashaw for the victory here, and still.
And Paulo, who do you like here, the champ to retain or the challenger to gain?
I'm liking T.J. Dillashaw to win this one. I mean, Dominic Cruz was on Anik and Florence podcast the other day, and this is what he said. It's like Dillashaw's going to win because he's just too unorthodox and Barrow's just too orthodox. So I think what it is that Dillashaw is just the footwork, the movement, the angling, and the coaching from Dwayne Ludwig. He's just like a more fluid fighter, and he's the faster fighter. I mean, I kept watching the first round, the first 3.5 minutes of that before he landed that knockdown, and I'm like, Barra just completely didn't know, like he looked bewildered. Like I think that's when he was really caught off guard. It's like, whoa, what is this guy? He's like moving around. I can't get a beat on him. I mean, it's already hard to land squarely in a guy's jaw when they're a stationary target. Imagine someone who keeps moving around like TJ Dillashaw and keeps switching up his angles and hitting you from all kinds of positions. Another thing is that he throws at such a rapid pace. I mean, I think in his last 3 fights he landed over 110 punches. I mean, that's crazy. That's insane pace that he's going. So yeah, I mean, but I'm not gonna completely underestimate Barrow here. He could catch TJ Dillashaw and finish him, and if the fight goes to the ground, it's lights out. I think Barrow's that's his best chance to win, actually.
You can never count out Henan Brow because obviously he can pull out submissions from nowhere.
40, the sub prop for Barrow. Now, I'm not telling you to bet it right now, but I think that's an insane number for, in my opinion, what Barrow's most likely chance of success is. But, you know, team TJ Dillashaw, he's team alpha male. He's a great wrestler. He's never been subbed before. And team alpha male fighters are notorious for their sub defense. I don't think a team alpha male fighter has been subbed before. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of any one of those guys being subbed. So that's why that number's probably that high. But, you know, TJ Dillashaw, I'd say by decision or very late finish.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny how you mentioned that, obviously, with the submission. Lots of Dillashaw himself and his, I guess you could call him a coach / training partner, Justin Buckles, they're actually both calling, and I'm sure there's other people as well out of Team Alpha Male calling, they're actually thinking Dillashaw could pull off a submission in this fight, which is pretty surprising to me. Like, I'd either choose him by decision or by TKO, but you never know. Obviously, with training out of Team Alpha Male, he does have great submissions, and I wouldn't be shocked to see him pull one on Henan Brow. But the thing is, you can never count out Henan Brow. He can knock guys out at whenever, and really, and I don't know, it's closer than I want to think, but you just got to look back at the first fight. Dillashaw Brow won, and Dillashaw dominated Henan Brow, and I don't think it'll be as dominant, but you can't side with Henan Brow in this one just because of that first performance, because of the past. And Dillashaw will have his way again with Henan Brow. I don't think it'll be as dominant, but this is a style fight where Dillashaw will not lose unless, like Daniel said, Brow effectively cuts him off his angles, but I just don't see that happening. I do think Dillashaw will get rocked a couple times again, but I actually like Dillashaw by decision. I don't think he will stop it. But like I said, he can TKO Barrow again. He can even pull off a rear naked choke or whatever. So I am looking forward to this fight because I wouldn't be surprised if Henan Barrow pulls it off and regains his championship. So I think let's end it off at there. Obviously, thanks to both of you guys for joining me once again on the 4th edition of Before the Battle. And before we end this call, Daniel, where can we find you on social media, and let us know of anything coming up?
You guys can find me at Best Fight Picks on Twitter, bestfightpicks.com. Enter your email in that top right corner, and you'll get the best fight picks sent directly to your inbox every single fight week. Also, every Thursday or Friday on Fight Week, I have a new show called Half the Battle, and tonight's episode, you're actually probably going to see this tomorrow, so it'll be like last night's episode, but you should check it out. It's going to have Carlin Bardsley, Andrew the Clown Kid Lawrence. Next week, we're going to have our first UFC fighter on the show. Can't reveal it quite yet, but you'll find out soon enough. And also, every Wednesday or Thursday, depending where you are on the globe, myself and Flying Brian, we do the Flying with Best Fight Picks podcast where we break down the entire card from start to finish, let you know which place to place, your counter move teams, your UFC pick'em, the entire ordeal. Check it out, bestfightpicks.com.
And Paolo, where can we find you on the Twitterverse and anywhere else on the internet?
So at Twitter, at the Twitter world, I'm at GoPaoloMMA. And you can also find me writing articles for at Vendetta Fighter. I'm the writer for Vendetta fighter. And at today's knockout, actually, like I said, I just did an article on why Jessica Ai is gonna beat Miesha Tate. You guys should check that out. And yeah, join the UFC. If you're on Facebook, join the UFC Facebook group that we run. We are the largest UFC group on Facebook. We're about 70,000 members strong, aiming to get 100,000. So come join us. So we're probably at 75,000 by now. Yeah.
All right, for me, you can check me out on Twitter at NickUFC. Head over to my website, MMAJR.co. We'll have lots of pre-fight and post-fight coverage for UFC on Fox 16, so check that out, of course. And obviously my weekly podcast, MMA Junior Radio, I host that with John King, who also writes for my website, and we just talk about MMA news. We have guests on the show, whatnot. I don't have any guests to reveal for next week's show quite yet, but I had Carlin Bardsley on this week's show last Wednesday, so check that out for sure. Great chat there about just the past 4 UFC events and whatnot. And one last thing, I'll be on TSN 1290 Radio this Sunday at 10:15,
Nice.
11:15 Eastern time. So I can't wait for that. That'll be great to be guest on the weigh-in. So that's their weekly MMA show. So make sure to tune into that if you can. And until then, enjoy the fights.